Good evening. We'll be starting this session, live session. If you have any questions or clarifications or queries, please go ahead. I'll try to answer. Okay, I'm waiting for the questions. I think you have gone through the 3 assignments. Already 3 assignments have been given to you. So if you have any, how were the assignments? Did you find those questions interesting? Or did you learn something in the first 3, assignments or lectures? Please give your comments, and then we'll try to discuss if there is any specific issues. I'll try to clarify those. Please come forward and give your comments, ask few questions, or give your views on whatever you have gone through the courses. I think 3 modules you have already seen or gone through. Several videos you have seen. And assignment questions you have also gone through or answered many of them. So how were the questions? Please give your views and comments. And if you have any specific queries, clarifications, you can ask those. I'm waiting for your views, clarifications, or queries, if there are any. You can ask any question with regard to this course. It's basically on steel quality. So you must have understood in the first few lectures what is meant by quality. What is the basic idea of quality? It has been made clear that it is related to the application requirements. That means the quality issues are not absolute. Depending on for what applications a particular steel product is being used, quality will depend on that. The requirements of quality for that particular application is very important. So we must understand for what specific purpose we are using a particular product, steel product. Otherwise, it will not be very concrete, understanding of quality. So quality depends on the specific application requirements. First, we have to understand for what or which application the specific steel product is being used or is supposed to be used. Based on that, definitely there will be certain requirements. So whether those quality requirements are being fulfilled, how those can be fulfilled, what are the different issues. These are the factors which will be covered in this course. So in the first few lectures, I have tried to give certain examples. What are the different applications for which different steels are being used? So if we can understand what are the applications, if we go through what are the different applications, then we will know what are the requirements, what are the specific issues which will define our quality. That is what is very important. First few lectures will make clear to you what are the different applications for various segments of applications where different steel products are used. So if you understand those, it will be clear how you define quality for each and every specific application. Then only it will be clear to you that quality is not an absolute issue. It is specific issues related to application. That's why we have to understand what are the application requirements, and with respect to those, we have defined the quality parameters for different steel products. So it is not absolute. Understanding of quality is not absolute. It is specific with respect to application requirements. It is very important to understand that. So that's why first few slides in the lecture, I have tried to give you several applications of steel and what are the present understanding of quality requirements based on the application requirements, of course. So you must have understood by this time what are the different applications, what are the common applications for which different steel products are used. And if we understand those, if we go through those, then only we'll try to develop and what are the application requirements. How do you satisfy those application requirements? What are the quality parameters? What are the quality attributes which require to be fulfilled? Then only those application requirements will be met. So those are very important issues. So please give your comments, please ask any questions or any clarifications, whatever you have gone through with the course. Give your views, clarifications, queries, and I'll try to answer those. Try to satisfy your questions or queries. The whole course is based on understanding of steel quality and how this steel quality, first we have to understand what are the quality attributes and then how these quality attributes can be achieved or improved or enhanced by means of secondary refining and continuous casting. So unless we understand what are the different application requirements, what is meant by quality for the different application requirements, first we have to understand those and then only we have to go through what are the secondary refining parameters, issues, processes, quality continuous casting parameters, issues, which will affect either positively or negatively the quality issues or parameters. First, we have to understand what is meant by quality issues. Then only we can go ahead with secondary refining and continuous casting process as such. What are the aspects of specific steel chemistry, whether that is going to affect the quality, and how secondary refining and continuous casting will specifically affect different quality attributes. That is what we are trying to look into in this course. So whatever lectures or assessments, assignments you have found, you have gone through, give your views on those, give specific queries or comments so that we can go ahead for the subsequent lectures, subsequent assignments, and I can understand what are your requirements, specific requirements. So I am waiting for your clarifications and queries. There must be some queries, there must be some clarifications. Please go ahead. Let me understand your views. What are the issues? Then it will be easier for me to give my comments. Something is expected now. Questions? I think I need your specs possibly. Fun? Maybe we have to increase the letter size or something. What is those? The same thing is coming here. Yes. Yeah, but the letter size we have to increase possibly. Somebody is giving comment? I think somebody has asked Mr. Sharma, that is strength of secondary refining steel same as fast refining steel? Would you please clarify what is meant by fast refining steel? Please clarify what is meant by fast refining steel and what is meant by strength of secondary refining steel. You know, first it is primary steel making. What is the first steps of steel making is primary steel making. That may not lead to refining. What you do in primary steel making essentially encompasses what? So induction melting, electric arc furnace, basic oxygen furnace. So what you are basically doing is melting of steel and some preliminary refining of steel. Like in BOF, what you do is you reduce carbon because you are adding hot metal as input material for BOF. And in induction furnace, induction melting, you are adding scrap. In electric arc furnace, you are adding scrap. The whole idea there is to melt it and then try to reduce carbon because you are using oxygen, so there will be carbon oxidation. So carbon will come out, will come down. And the next issue of refining, some amount of refining, what is possible in BOF is control of phosphorus because it is highly oxidizing the process, BOF. So some amount of our phosphorus can be brought down easily with the help of oxygen. But nothing much you can do beyond that. You cannot really reduce too much of sulfur here or too much of gaseous contents. And oxygen, in fact, will go up because it is an oxidation process. So those are the issues we have to remember. So the question, Mr. Sharma, is strength of secondary refining steel same as fast refining steel? It's not very clear. You can clarify it, can make it more specific. What do you mean by fast refining steel? Are you meaning the first process in refining? Then the first process of refining will come just after primary steel making. In primary steel making, what you are doing is you are basically melting it, trying to make it homogeneous, and the temperature of the steel is, you are achieving something, and after that, you are tapping the steel in ladle. So whatever refining you do will be in ladle only. So first you tap the steel in ladle after primary steel making. That means that whether in BOF or electric arc furnace or induction melting, you tap the steel, hot steel, high temperature steel in a ladle, and next comes refining of steel. Then you do whatever refining are actually necessary for reducing the different elements. Now, what are the elements you do not want in steel? You do not want oxygen in steel. You do not want sulfur in steel. You do not want nitrogen in steel. Most of the steel you do not require nitrogen. You do not require hydrogen in steel. You do not require phosphorus in steel. So these are the elements which have to be brought down for giving you a good quality of steel. And how much you bring it down depends on a specific application. For all steels or all steel products, you do not require a fixed amount of phosphorus or hydrogen or nitrogen or oxygen. So depending on the application requirement, you have to bring down these undesirable elements. In the process, the defects in steel also will come down. So that is the basic requirement. The first few lectures I have tried to make it very clear what are the different applications and how the application requirements can be met. And based on those application requirements, the quality issues can be defined for those specific steel products, steel applications. And then Mr. Venugopal, he has asked that tell something about current steel making in India and maybe foreign countries. You know, India is now producing how much of steel India is producing is about 100 million ton. We are the second largest producer of steel in the world. China is number 1 and India, we are number 2. So amount wise, quantity wise, we are making a reasonably good amount of steel. But our population is also very high. So our specific steel requirement or how much steel we are consuming, specific steel consumption, if you take the whole population into consideration, it is really not very high. So if you are making 100 million ton, you divide that 100 million ton of steel with say about 125 or 130 crores of people, then our specific requirement of steel is about how much it will be. It will be maybe 60 kilogram. That is the specific steel consumption. So we must increase this to very high amount. If you compare the steel consumption, specific steel consumption for say China or say advanced countries like US or Japan, it is very high, or say South Korea, it is as high as maybe 300 or 400 kilogram per individual in a year. So with respect to that, though our production is relatively good, our specific steel consumption is quite low. So for our big, large population, we have to increase our steel because what is the requirement of steel? For our infrastructure, we require steel. For our cars, we require steel. For our transformer, we require a lot of steel. For our construction, houses, bridges, we require a lot of steel. So our steel consumption has to increase if we have to do a lot of industrialization. For our infrastructure enhancement, we require a lot of steel. So we must increase our steel production based on our requirements. And you must be knowing that what are the important plants in India where a lot of steel is produced. You must have heard of Steel Authority of India Limited. They have a lot of steel plants at Vilai, at Bokaro, at Durgapur, at Raurkela, at Salem. These are the plants which are producing different steel products. Then in private sector, we have JSW, which is the largest steel producer in India right now. They have their factory at Tornagalu, it's near Bellary in Karnataka. They are producing a huge amount of steel. If you consider only one unit, one place, then it is the largest producer of steel in India right now. Then you have heard of Tata Steel, which have a big plant at Jamshedpur. Also at Kalinganagar, they are also producing a lot of steel, very high amount of steel. Then you have other steel producers like Jindal Steel and Power Limited, and you have very important steels like stainless steel. Jindal Stainless is a big producer of stainless steel. Different steel plants are there, different steel producing companies are there in India that producing large amount of steel, about 100 million ton in a year. Right now, that is our steel production per year. And in other countries, China, which is the largest steel producer, we have many big steel producers, like Bao Steel is important. They make large amount of steel. Japan used to be the second largest producer. Now we have toppled Japan. We are the number 2 and Japan is now number 3. In Japan, there are big producers like Nippon Steel producers. They are producing a large amount of steel. Nippon Kokan, they produce a lot of high amount of steel. So as far as the quantity of steel is concerned, there are many big, large producers. But we also should look into the quality aspects. What is meant by steel quality? If you understand what is meant by steel quality, I have tried to make it clear in the first few lectures that it is not absolute. Understanding of quality is not absolute. It is relative with respect to the specific applications. So that's why we call it application specific steel quality. Steel quality has to be understood with respect to the application requirements. So quality is always application specific. That means it depends on the specific application requirement. I have tried to make it clear. The steel which is required for your building construction, so it has certain requirements. Steel which is meant for food processing applications, it has very stringent applications. So those application requirements will be different. So quality issues will be different. Steel which is required for transform, very stringent requirement again. So depending on the application, your requirements are defined. You must have heard about tire cord. It's a very thin wire of steel which is used for making tire. Tire for the automobiles, tire for the two-wheelers. So there, one steel component is used that is called tire cord. It is a very thin steel wire. Because it is very thin, the application requirements are also very stringent. Because if you have inclusion means which you do not desire in steel. Those are undesirable constituents in steel. So if the size of the inclusions is very important, size has to be very low, less than the 50 micron, less than 30 micron, then only your steel is good. The quality is good. If the size of the inclusion and the amount of inclusion are more, we call the steel dirty steel. We call the steel bad quality. So we have to understand what are the different applications, what are the requirements, what are the size of the inclusions, what is the amount of inclusion, how much of phosphorus should be there. It should be below a certain limit. How much of sulfur should be there, maximum amount. It should not go beyond certain limits because the quality will be affected. Specifically, I will discuss in the subsequent lectures. You will come to know how phosphorus, sulfur, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, they affect different steel quality parameters. So all these different elements have to be controlled while you are defining steel. What is meant by steel defining? It basically, what it does, steel refining, it essentially controls the undesirable elements. What are the undesirable elements in steel? I have tried to make it clear. Phosphorus, sulfur, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen. These are the undesirable elements in steel. So we have to control these elements. There are certain trace elements like antimony. Okay, we do not require those elements in steel, like copper in steel. We do not require. There are specific applications where you may require copper, but that is a specific requirement. But in general, you do not require the trace elements in steel, copper, antimony. So those have to be controlled. Those elements will understand when you go ahead with my lectures in subsequent, you know, um, when you go into the subsequent lecture series, you will understand that these elements can be controlled when you control the source of these elements in steel. The source basically is the scrap. So the scrap quality is very important. Scrap should not have or a very low amount of these undesirable trace elements. Then only you have a very good quality of steel in the final analysis, final stage. Number one. Number two, in the refining stage, you want to control sulfur, phosphorus, oxygen, because in basic oxygen furnace, you are introducing oxygen in steel. Why? Because you want to control the carbon content. Depending on the application, your carbon is required. If you want a very low carbon steel, you do a lot of deoxidation, lot of decarbonization, that rather. That means you are controlling the carbon in steel. But if you want a, say, high carbon steel, say you want 0.5% carbon steel, you want 0.7% carbon steel, there are certain requirements where you require high carbon steel. So quality of steel does not mean, some people understand that quality of steel means carbon has to be low. No. Carbon depends on the application. For certain products, you require different carbon. So if you require low carbon, then your carbon has to be brought down. If you require medium carbon, carbon has to be controlled within that range. If you require high carbon, say 1% carbon, certain requirements may have, certain applications may require 1% carbon. So there you have to control your carbon to 1%. That means you have to add maybe carbon in steel to increase the carbon. So I think you understand what is meant by quality. Again, I am repeating, quality is application specific. So that means depending on the specific application for which a steel product is meant for, quality has to be defined. How much of sulfur should be there? How much of phosphorus should be there? All these are undesirable elements. How much of hydrogen should be there? What is the maximum limit? What is the maximum limit of inclusion size and inclusion content? These are the issues by which we define steel quality. So secondary refining and continuous casting will address these issues. So it is very important to understand how secondary refining and continuous casting will control undesirable elements, will control different defects in steel, which we do not want, but they may come into steel during the process of steel making or during the process of continuous casting. So to what extent we have to control them, to within which limits we have to control them, these are the issues which will be covered in this course during the subsequent lectures. But first thing we have to understand that what is meant by steel quality. So that's why I was trying to give you certain examples, different applications. You have heard of, soft drink cans. You have heard of those cans, food drink cans. Those cans are very low carbon steel. The quality requirement, because we are keeping food drinks in those cans, so the quality requirements are very, very stringent. And it is also a very thin sheet. So your inclusion content, inclusion size has to be very low. Then only you get a good quality. If you have large amount of inclusions which are undesirable, if you have larger size of inclusions. During processing of these scans, those will come to the surface, and that is unfit for any application, food application. So food can is one important steel application where you require very good quality, very high quality of steel. I have mentioned tire cord. Then ball bearing is another important steel application where you require very high quality of steel. Your oxygen content in steel has to be very, very low, because if you have high amount of oxygen, what is the problem? You will have oxides in steel, which are called inclusions. Those are not required in ball bearing steel or many steels. If you have high sulfur in steel, say more than 0.2 weight percent, then you have high sulfide inclusion in steel, which is not required. So that is going to be a undesirable inclusion. So to control inclusion in steel, you must control the amount of oxygen and amount of sulfur in steel. So that is what refining is meant. How you control sulfur in steel, how you control oxygen in steel, and then this hydrogen, if it is more, then you have some problem. There may be hydrogen cracking, there may be hydrogen blister formation. So that's what you have to control in most of the steel components. So these are the elements which have to be controlled. Then only you get a good quality steel. Any specific, any other issues? Any of you want to ask me, please ask. Then I can try to answer those questions or clarifications. Have you any specific questions? Please ask me. Any queries, any issues which are difficult to understand, whatever you have gone through my lectures. Was there any difficulty? Was there any specific issues? Please try to understand and then ask questions. Today I'm here to answer to your questions, give answer to your questions, clarifications, any misunderstanding which you have with regard to steel quality or anything with regard to steel. If you have any questions or clarifications, please try to understand and ask questions. So I hope there are no more clarifications. Or should I wait for your clarifications or questions? Or should I wind it up, this session? I am waiting for your clarifications. If you have some more clarifications, specific clarifications, questions, please ask. Did you get the notice that today there will be a live session? I think you have got it. Whoever have registered for this course, steel quality course, I think you have got the information through the mail that today there will be a live session at 6. So if you have some of you have specific questions, please ask. I am there to help you to give response to your clarifications, to your questions. I may wait for some more time if you have any clarifications and questions. Satisfy your queries. Or it appears you have just started listening to my lectures, so it is too early to ask questions, it looks like. How were the questions in the assignments? I think you have faced 3 assignments. So every assignment had few questions. MCQs, multiple choice questions, where you have to give your choice from the different answers which were there, different options there. You have to find out the right answer, either 1 or 2, depending on different questions which have been offered. So What are your reactions to those questions? Those questions, did they enhance your understanding of the subject, or were not to your expectations? How were the questions? What about the standard of the questions? Did you require to think about the subject, or you wanted to go into my lectures again to answer those questions, or they were very simple or reasonable or a bit difficult? How were the questions? I feel they were reasonable. They were relatively easy. If you have followed my lectures, whatever I have covered, the questions are very easy from my point, from my understanding. So I want to hear from you what your understanding of the questions, your feeling. How were the questions? Were they easy or difficult or complicated? I think it is too early to ask you questions, possibly, because the course has just started. Anyway, please go through my lectures, go through the assignment questions. I think 3 assignments have been given to you in each week. 3 weeks have gone by. So each week you must have received several questions for each assignment. So go through the questions. If you have some clarifications, then you write to me, you send mail to me. I'll try to answer those. So let me wind it up for today. Is it okay, participants? Because any specific question, if it is not forthcoming, then I feel maybe in subsequent sessions you'll be asking questions. We are waiting for some more lecture sessions. So let me wind it up for today. Thank you, participants. Good evening.